Hello dear viewer, you're welcome to this lesson. We are going to have social studies, primary 4 class, and today we are going to begin a new topic that is going to be our last topic in this term. Remember, in this term 3, we still have 2 topics. We are done with the previous one, that is leaders in our district. Today we are going to look at how to meet people's needs in our district, and of course we find this on page 39. So if you have your workbook, kindly go to that page. When we have this topic, how to meet people's needs in our district, we are going to begin by talking about what we call social services. This is our first item of discussion that we are going to be understanding. In primary 3, we must have said something about social services. And we are going to begin by understanding the meaning of social services. The social services, we can call them facilities, we can call them needs, or we can as well say these are the services. But it's better we can say these are facilities provided to people by both the government and what we call the non-governmental organizations. These are the ones that we call NGO, that is, if it is one non-governmental organization. But because we are having it in plural, as you can see there is S here, we are having non-governmental organizations, so we are going to add S here to form non-governmental organizations. We are saying these are facilities provided to people by both the government and the non-governmental organizations, those are what's called NGOs, to improve on their welfare. This is the definition for social services that we are going to be using beginning from our primary 4. What we must have learned in primary 3 was that in P3 we must have said these are services provided by the government for people to live a better life. That was according to primary 3. In P4 upwards, we upgrade our sentence and we make it known that not only the government but also we have other non-governmental organizations providing these services that we call social services. That's why we are saying these are the services. In case you can't say facilities, you can still say these are the services provided by both the government and the non-governmental organizations. They are the ones we have called NGOs to improve on their welfare. Whose welfare? The one of the people. And remember, we are talking about the people who are in our district. Just to remind you once again, in P4 we talk about our district. Now, you can also be asked to write NGO in full. Of course, I've already given you. NGO means non-governmental organization. If the S is there, it means it is in a plural form. Now, having defined social services, we are going to look at what are the examples of these social services that people in our district are provided with. Which social services are provided by people in our district? Examples of social services in our district. We are going to look at a number of social services ranging from, I think, let us begin with the one that we are having now, that is education service. We shall begin with this. We shall go to health service. We shall also have people in our district provided with security service. We shall have transport service. We shall have banking service. We shall also have a communication service. We shall be looking at this one by one. We also have what we call a housing service. That is where we shall be talking about accommodation. And then we shall also have what we call water supply service. Then we shall also look at what we call electricity supply. Now, what we shall be able to note is that these last two we are having will fall under what we call amenities. Now, how do we define amenities? Amenities are the social services that make people's lives easy and better. So we can say amenities are social services. These are the social services that make people's lives easy and better. That is how we are going to define amenities. Now, which examples do we have here? We have said the last two, those are water supply, and then we have electricity. These are the ones that form what we call amenities. These are the examples of amenities we have. So, having looked at these examples of social services, we have started from education service, health service, security service, transport, banking, communication, housing service, water supply, and electricity. Of course, the two are the ones that we are calling the amenities. We are now going to be looking at them one by one, and we are going to begin with the first one, which is education service. Education in our district. Now, we are going to begin by first of all defining what we call, or what we call education. What is education? Now, we are going to say education is a process of acquiring skills, knowledge and attitudes. That is what we mean by education. So you will find we are even having it in our books. We are saying education is a process. We call it a process because it is not something that happens once in a while, or it does not happen only once. It is something which is continuous. That's why we call it a process. You will find today, this year, we are in primary 4. Last year we were in primary 3, the other year we were in primary 2, then the other one we were in P1, the other one we were in top class, like that, and you go back up the time you were in baby class. And this is not still the limit. You will find that you are still going ahead. So after our primary 4, we shall move to our P5, shall go to P6, shall go to P7, and according to our country, after primary 7, you now move the next level of learning. So that is why we call it a process. It is continuous. Now, we are going to be looking at what we call types of education. Types of education. Now, education, we are going to look at 2 types of education. There are 2 types. One, we have what we call informal education. Then, we shall also have what we call formal education. Now, someone should be able to understand this well. As a primary 4 child, you should be able to tell what is informal education and what is it all about formal education. Now, we are going to say that informal education was the type of education which used to exist before the coming of the missionaries. You could find that under informal education, children were taught at homes. There were no like schools like today, whereby you find you children go to school and then you meet the teachers there with other children and you learn. That is now under what you call formal. But under informal, you could find that the children were taught by their relatives, by their elders, the grandparents, the parents. They are the ones that could give these children that education, that knowledge, those skills, those attitudes. Therefore, we are going to be looking at what we call fireplaces. Fireplaces. Remember, we are still looking at informal education. And in informal education, we had what we call fireplaces long ago. These are places you could find like in the evening, people could set fire. And then as people are maybe getting the warmth from the fire, or maybe they are roasting some food, maybe they are roasting some foodstuffs like cassava with potatoes, or maybe they are roasting an animal which they hunted during daytime. They could now pass this knowledge to, they could now pass these lessons to the young ones in form of riddles, proverbs, legends. All those are the ways they could give the lessons, which means that these fireplaces were acting as the classrooms for the children of long ago. That is before the coming of the missionaries who introduced this formal education. We shall be coming to look at it also. Which means if you are asked how important were fireplaces, please, these fireplaces were acting as the classrooms. Just like for us today, where our lessons take place, of course, that is what we call a classroom. So the fireplaces acted as the classrooms for those children during that informal education. Therefore, we are going to look at the lessons that were given to children. The lessons that were given to children during informal education. Now, which lessons were given to these children? These children were given lessons based on their gender. You could find that children like the boys were given lessons on how to become responsible men in the future. Now, which lessons were these? These boys were taught how to hunt. That is one. They were taught how to carry out fishing. They were taught how to look after their families. Of course, being a boy, that boy was to grow into an adult. And of course, a father, we learned right away from primary 3. We understood that it's the father who heads a family. So these boys were taught on how to take care of their families when they grow up. And then also, these boys were also taught how to look after animals. How to look after, that's what we can term as looking after animals. So these were the lessons that were given to the boys. Then we move to look at the lessons that were given to the girls. We are still looking at in that informal education. The girls were given lessons on how to cook. They were trained how to cook. Of course, we are looking at cooking food. The girls were also trained on how to fetch water and firewood. How to fetch. Let's talk about firewood here. And also fetching water. And then how to looking after the children. That is to make sure the children are clean, they are bathed in case, their clothes are washed, all those things that a mother does at home. That these young girls were trained to do that. So we have seen the different or the respective lessons that were given to each gender. The boys were taught how to hunt, how to do fishing, how to look after their families, then how to look after the animals. This is grazing animals. And then the girls were taught how to cook, how to fetch water or firewood, how to look after the children. Those are the lessons that were taught there. Now, moving away from informal education, we shall now come to formal education. Formal education. Now, what I can only say for now is this formal education was introduced into Uganda. We are now talking about our country by the people who are called. It was introduced by the people we call missionaries. Missionaries. So when we reach primary 5, we shall be able to understand well who are these missionaries and where did they come from and why did they come to Uganda. Only briefly, we say a missionary is a person who goes out of his homeland to another country to preach the word of God or to preach his religion. So we shall be able to know that we have people who came to Uganda from their own countries, that is in Europe. We shall be looking at that in primary 5. And these people are the ones who introduced this kind of education that we call formal education. It is the one that replaced what we call informal education. Now, under formal education, this is the one that we are right now having. It's the one that I'm teaching you right now. You'll find that this is getting lessons or getting the skills, knowledge, and attitudes from a recognized institution. You will find when these missionaries came, for them, they started building schools such that these children were no longer learning from home, from those fireplaces, but now they were to go and they gather as a class, and they are now in that institution. That's why we are now having the schools. So you'll find that these children also were to be trained by trained people. Like I am talking to you, I am a teacher, not just any other person teaching them. That's why you'll find that when you go to school, you'll find the teachers are there who were trained on how to teach you. So that is what we are calling, or that's what we mean by formal education. It is the one whereby today we learn how to read and write. We are able to do some calculations. We learn lessons like English. Here now we don't again talk about the other lessons of looking after the animals, cooking food, fetching firewood. No, those ones are not there. That one was replaced. So that is what we talk about as for that type of formal education. Next, we are going to be looking at what we call levels of education. Now, we need to know the difference between types of education and then the labels. Allow me green here that we can add those labels here. So after the types, the next thing is we need to note the labels of education. So like I have said, in Uganda today, we have formal education replacing informal education, which means we now recognize mainly formal education over the other. That's why you'll find that when you want to get a job, they are going to ask you for the papers that you attained from the school that you went to, from that institution. No one will be asking you, were you trained how to hunt? Were you trained how to fish? Were you trained how to fetch firewood? That is on the other informal. No, this formal education has now covered informal education. Now, in this, we are going to look at labels. Those are the steps that you are supposed to pass through in your learning, in your education. Well aware that you finished the nursery level. This is what we call pre-primary, meaning before the primary level. So I'm sure we all finished this and we finished that course. We even graduated when we were in the top class. That is graduating for us to come to primary 1, which means we were saying bye-bye to that to that nursery level. Now we are in the primary level. We are right now in the primary level. That's why you will find when they ask you, in which class are you? You say, I am in primary 4. I am in P4. The P means primary, meaning you are in this level of primary. Now you will go to primary, that is primary 1, primary 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to primary 7. After primary 7, you will proceed to the secondary level. Secondary level of education. Now, in this secondary level, we are having 2 levels here. We have from senior 1 up to the senior 1 means senior 1 that we can write as S1. That is, now we are now looking at the secondary part. Senior 1 up to senior 4, you will get what we call the ordinary level certificate. Ordinary level. That's what we call O level. I think you must have ever heard people talking about O level. That one finished O level, which means that person has sat senior 4. And when you finish that senior 4, you will get that certificate. Now, after that, you will now move to what we call advanced learners. That is now what we call A level, advanced. That is now senior 5 up to senior 6. And when you finish that, of course, you will now leave that level of secondary. Now, sometimes you will find that some people move from senior 1 to senior 4, and they now branch from here. Whereas others continue, all these are forming what we call the secondary level. These are the sub-parts in secondary level. Now, after the secondary level, next is what we call, we shall have what we call the tertiary level. Tertiary level. Now, the tertiary level, we are looking at, for example, we find maybe from senior 4, someone goes to take a course. Maybe someone goes and becomes an engineer, maybe building. Maybe one goes to become a plumber. One goes to maybe, we are looking at those courses that people go and they take. That is what we call tertiary. And then also, others now join the universities. That brings what we call the university level. And this is now our last level. that we have in education. So you will find that for you have finished this, you are now in the second one. There is still a lot that you are supposed to go through. That is what we need to note about education. And kindly note that in education, in the previous topic, when we are looking at the officials at the district, we talked about the district education officer. I just want to remind you that the DEO is the one who is in charge education in a district. And also we also understood that we have the ministry, that is Ministry of Education and Sports, which is now the one taking care of education system and its activities, all its programs in the whole country. That's what we call Ministry of Education and Sports. But at the district level, we have the District Education Officer. For that, we shall move to another social service. But before we move to the next social service, we need to understand the people who provide us with education. Of course, when we are asked such a question, teachers are there, so you can write that. Then we can also talk about the tutors, and then we have the lecturers. Those are people who provide education. They are the ones who teach. So we have people who provide education. We have said we have teachers, we have tutors. Now the tutors are the ones who train the teachers. I hope you are getting that. The tutors train the teachers, and then now the teachers come and teach the children. That is, these are the ones. Then we have the lecturers. These are the ones who teach the people who are at the university. The candidates at the university. Sometimes they call those ones campusers. Because now this is now what we talk about as campus. That's must have had people talking about that. So that is about that's about education system or education service. It is one of the social services provided. Remember, we say these services are provided by both the government and the non-government organization. For example, we have looked at education. You will find that in the education system, we have the government schools. Those are the ones we call public schools, providing that education service. And also, of course, that is on the side of the government. And also, we have the non-government schools that we call private schools. For example, our school is a private school. But it's also giving us education, moreover, a very good education service. So we need to note that these services are provided by both government and non-governmental organizations. So that is about education. Of course, when we touch about the government schools, we need also to remember about the universal primary education. Remember, the government schools are under that program of the universal primary education, UPE. Then we also have the universal secondary education, that is USE, which is providing education to those students who are at the secondary level. And of course, we are looking at the government schools or the public schools. So that is what happens. And talking about the UPE, you can be given a lot of questions from that UPE program. We have said in the government schools, we have universal primary education. This is what we write as UPE. Then we also have what we call universal. We shall also have universal secondary education. This is USE. USE. I say USE is for secondary schools, whereas UPE is for the primary schools. That is providing free education. However, these programs have a lot of challenges. For example, when we talk about problems faced by UPE schools, problems facing UPE, allow me talk about this because you also need this information. Now, when we talk about problems facing UPE, we look at a variety of challenges ranging from shortage of funds, Remember, this program is funded by the government. So sometimes you'll find that the government does not have enough money to support the UPE program. It brings what we call shortage of funds. Then the other one is a shortage of scholastic materials. Shortage of scholastic, from the word school, we get scholastic materials. We are now looking at the items used in schools like the textbooks. So sometimes those materials are not also readily available, and this becomes another problem facing this program. Then we have lack of enough teachers. Lack of enough teachers in those UPE schools. You'll find for us in FAINAP, you find we have a lot of teachers, but you find that sometimes in the government school, you'll find a whole school, one teacher teaching from primary 1 up to P7. You find the whole school has around 5 teachers, maybe 6 teachers. So you'll find that the workload is too much, therefore the teachers cannot do their work well. And of course, it makes now the education system not to be okay. So that is what we mean by that. Then we also have another problem of lack of enough classrooms. Lack of enough classrooms. Remember, these children have also to be given where to learn from. Lack of enough classrooms, which sometimes you find in most cases the classrooms are not enough, and as a result you find some children end up learning outside, maybe under big trees. And of course, you know, when children learn like that, when the moment it's threatening to rain, children are dispersed, run home before it starts pouring, because there is nowhere you are going to take shelter from when it begins raining. So you'll find that such children do not get enough of their education. And then we have other problems like shortage of desks. Shortage of desks. We can put this together as furniture. Shortage of furniture. It also becomes another problem. Those children, sometimes for you at school, you enjoy, remember the nice seats you used to enjoy at school, those plastic chairs. You had very nice seats for you in your school. But you find some children in the UPE schools, for them, they don't have the desks, they sit on bricks. Someone gets a big stone, puts down and sits on it. Someone gets a log and sits on it. Education continues. So that is the challenge that is facing that program that we call the UPE or USE. Of course, remember, on page 45, we are given what we call a BEC. We are given what we call a BEC, that is Alternative Basic Education for Karamoja. We are now going to look at the solutions, or what the government is trying to do to solve those problems that we have talked about. Of course, the problems are there, but now the government is trying its best to make sure these problems are addressed. So when you are asked to give reasons on how to, or how the UPE can be improved, you base on the problems. Like the problem says shortage of funds. What should be done? The government should allocate enough funds, the UPE program. Then there are no scholastic materials. We have talked about scholastic materials. For example, we have talked about the textbooks. textbooks. So what should be done? The government should provide enough textbooks to these schools. Then we have talked about problems like lack of enough classrooms. What should be done? The government should build more classrooms. And also other NGOs can come in maybe to support in building these classrooms in other schools. And this has been happening in most of the schools, more so in the rural areas. We have NGOs like Build Africa. They can help to build. Then we have ADRA. They can also help to build some classrooms. Then we have other NGOs like World Vision. We can also help. So such things can come in. And then we have shortage of furniture. What should be the solution? Of course, the government should provide enough furniture for the children in those public schools. And then we have also talked of having programs like we have ABEC, that is Alternative Basic Education for Karamoja. This is the government program under UPE, which was initiated, which was brought up in order to help the children in Karamoja. For them also to acquire education. Remember, when we talk about Karamoja, is one of what we call hard-to-reach areas, whereby people do not value so much the education. So such programs can be put in place such that these children are motivated to go and learn. And that is what we can be saying about education. So we are going to look at health service. Of course, when we look at the health service, we are now looking at treatment. That is, when we fall sick, what are we supposed to do? Of course, we are supposed to go and get medication. That's what we call medical care from the different health facilities in our district. So we are having this on page 45, page 46. It is telling us that health service is a public service which is provided, that is from the health facilities. Of course, this is also what we term as medical care. We have the places that are providing that health service, that is places where health service can be provided. We have places like hospitals, as we have them on that page 46. We have hospitals, we have health centers, we have dispensaries, we have pharmacies, and then we have also what we call clinics. So these are the places which provide health services to the people. Of course, we need to note that we have the groups of people who provide health services. Groups of people who provide health service. Groups of people who provide health service. Just like we talked about on the other side of teaching, whereby we talked of groups of people providing education service, like the teachers, the tutors, the lecturers. It means that even here, when we come to look at health service, we have people who provide that service to others in our district. We have people who treat others, I should say it like that. Here we are going to have the first group, that is the group of doctors. I want you to be very, very attentive here. And then we have the nurses. We have the doctors, the nurses. Then we shall also have what we call the herbalists. Now the herbalists, these are people who use herbs. They get the extracts from the trees, maybe the leaves or the roots, and then they mix them to form a medicine, or to form to make something that when one takes or when one swallows it, the person becomes okay. The person heals from the disease that that person was suffering from. So these are the people we call herbalists. Of course, for them, they depend mainly on vegetation. They depend on those herbs. They depend on the vegetation or the forests. That's where they get this from. Now, when we come to the doctors, we have very many examples of doctors, and here I'm looking at the medical doctors, leave alone the other witch doctors. Maybe I'm not talking about those ones. I'm talking about the medical doctors. We have doctors like the surgeons. Of course, we need to know that we have different doctors performing different duties. We have the surgeons who deal with operating someone. They cut you, like maybe you have a problem in the stomach, they cut your stomach, then they fix the problem and they stitch that part back. Those are the people we call the surgeons. Then we have what we call the opticians. The opticians are the ones who deal with examining the eyes. And then we also have what we call the oculists. These are the ones who treat the eyes. Then we have the dentists also here. We have the dentists. The dentists, we know those are the doctors who deal with the teeth. They are the ones who deal with fixing teeth, and of course if there is a problem. Then we have the psychiatrists, and then we also have the radiologists, the neurologists, gynecologists. All these other examples of doctors that we have. The advantages of health services. One, we are saying it reduces on the death rates, meaning when people are given treatment, people prolong life, they will not again die. Even if one was to die of that disease, the person now gets cured. Number two, it makes people to live longer. That's what we call it increases on the lifespan of the person. Makes the person to live for a long time. Instead of the person dying at this time, the person will have more other years to live on earth. And then it makes people to be healthy and to be having the energy that is in their areas. So that is about the health services provided by the people. Also, what we need to note that health service, remember the other time we're looking at the district director of health services. This is the person who is in charge of health in a district, as you can hear it sounding, district director. Then also we need to note that in the whole country, the health matters are under the Ministry of Health. That is what we need also to note. The Ministry of Health is the one to design programs that are to help people to live a healthy life or to live healthy lives. Lastly, we are going to talk about the security, whereby in the previous topic, we talked about the armed forces. So it now becomes easier for me to say that security service, that should be our number 3, security service. Security service. The security service is provided by what we call the armed forces. The other time we talked about the armed forces, we talked about the Uganda police, we talked about the Uganda prisons, we talked about the Uganda army. That is the one we call the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Don't forget. We talked about the private security guards. Private security guards. These are the ones we call the askaris. So all these people are the ones providing us with that security service in our district. And then we also talked about the local defense units. That we say we can, if it is in a singular form, we can't just term it LDU. If it is in plural, local defense units, then we add S. So those are the people who provide. On page 47, we are given the examples of private-owned security companies. We have the Securex, we have the JAG Security Company, Tide Security, we have Securico, we have KK Security 2000 Limited, we have Top Security, and we have Seracin. All these are the examples of these security offices. I mean, these private security guards companies or private security companies who train these private security guards that we call the askaris. So you'll find that these askaris we have are from different security companies. You find others are trained under Serasin, others are from the Top Security, others are from KK Security, others are from Securex. So you will find one time maybe you will interact with yours. I know you have one at home. You will interact and he will tell you, or she will tell you where she or he was or belongs. Then lastly on that page we have the advantages of security. One, security promotes employment. I mean it promotes development in a country. When there is security, it means people's property are not destroyed. People can set up developmental programs without fear, and of course the area will develop. Then it also saves lives. Remember, if people are peaceful, there are no issues of death. No one will be killed. So it helps to save the lives of people. And also, it helps to save the property. And it makes people to live peacefully in an area. And then it also encourages people to work hard as they believe there will be no one to interfere with them. And then finally, it ensures the safe movement of both people and goods from one place to another, because there will be no other people to interfere with their movement or maybe block them on the way and they steal their things. All these are the answers that we look at when we are looking at the advantages of security. So our lesson is ending there. Next time we meet, we shall be discussing the remaining social services and the other two amenities that we also talked about. Thank you so much for being part of this lesson. We meet again another time.